Dr. Brooke, thanks for having us.
It's great to have you guys in Rappahannock County.
It's amazing to be here. We saved the best 2 episodes for last of our road trip.
Well, I hope so. Hope we're not disappointing you.
Yeah, you and your son-in-law, Joe, and we're really excited. Harry and I were saying we had such a good conversation with you the first time that you came on, which I think was around April. I'm pretty sure it was like right in the middle of the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's unbelievable to think how much change it's brought since then, even though it's like a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
And we've gotten to know you and your whole family really well, and just really appreciative of you opening your doors up to us to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you guys here. I look forward to meeting people and seeing people and talking to people, especially people that think in a very similar way that we do. And I actually feel like I met Harry once, but I feel like I know you guys pretty well, about as well as you could with never really being around you much. But appreciate what you do too. I'm really appreciative of what you guys do.
Thank you.
It's been great just getting to know people like yourself, and also like the beginning and starting of this podcast has really been an experience for us, just coming across people like you who are really working in the field that we're most interested in when it comes to food, and just the food system, but also like the medical side of things. Like, you bring such a unique perspective. So we were really excited just to get you back on the show to talk about, what's changed since April, what you've learned through some of the events and things that you've done. We know you just came back from the U.S. Cattlemen's Association event in Nashville, which looked like it was a great time. We were bummed we couldn't make that, but it's an interesting time to be thinking about these things. I think like food sovereignty is one of those topics that not a lot of people are focused on, and it's great just to really be able to get knowledge out of people who are experiencing this stuff on a day-to-day basis and share it with our audience, because I think it's very topical and people are interested in what's happening.
I never thought about it, but I do have a unique perspective. There are not a lot of people that are in food production or the cattle business that are also physicians, and they go hand in hand. When I got out of medical school many years ago, I don't know, what I learned, I was indoctrinated or whatever. I don't think it was indoctrination, but was thinking, the cure to disease came through pharma. And then went back to my principles of what I learned the very first day of medical school about basically you have to continue to think about things critically and reevaluate. Learned a lot of things in medical school that were just patently false. And I was told I would learn things that were patently false in medical school. But over time, as time has evolved, as a physician, I've become more of a health coach. And my goal is to keep people healthy and get them off medication. And to be quite honest, their personal habits, food being a huge one, are a great way to promote health and wellness and keep people from having to take medication and being sickly.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. And we were saying too, really how we had gotten connected was, there really aren't many physicians that are practitioners of the carnivore diet. So that's one of the cool things about this table is the three of us have had our own really unique experiences with that diet. And I'm sure seeing the amazing success that you've had, how good you feel in your 60s, where a lot of people feel like they're probably declining when they get to that age. I'm sure that taught you the amazing healing powers of the body, and how, unfortunately, even as a physician, you're just not taught that in medical school, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's so true. I wasn't always a carnivore. I didn't always eat extremely healthy. I ate pretty much a standard American diet, and raising 4 children, my life revolved around their activities and me being involved with them in their activities. And we ate on the run, or I didn't exercise as much as I did when I was a young man, and I pretty much got away from it. And then meeting Sean Baker and him, basically seeing what his gains that he's done and looking into it further, not just doing Google searches and seeing what pops up on Google, because they show you what they want you to see, but learning about health and wellness. And I was feeling old. I was that guy that was feeling old. I was not looking forward to life and aging, and I've changed my life, and it's changed so many of my patients' lives just by changing their diet or trying to change their diet and their personal habits. And a lot of them would go to doctors, and a lot of doctors are not healthy. And how do you take health advice from someone that doesn't appear healthy, that's obese or smokes cigarettes? And I think I have an advantage because a lot of my patients see me and how healthy I am, and how relatively youthful I look for my age of 62, and they're more likely to listen to me. So it gives me one up as far as that goes. And the ones that listen to me and change their lives, they're so happy, and they think I'm the greatest doctor in the world, and I'm not. I'm just doing what I learned from somebody else and what I've learned through personal experience.
That idea of a doctor being more of a coach and kind of playing the role of someone who's going to help you make better choices, but not necessarily give you kind of an out in terms of pharmaceuticals and things that are within their control, and maybe something that's easier to say, like, yeah, we're helping you get better in this one isolated area, but you're kind of ignoring other aspects of health, is really interesting to me, because I think a lot of people think about the role of a doctor not as this like holistic person who can speak to a number of different areas of your health. It's really like these isolated prescription model of medicine. But it sounds like what you're doing is really kind of teaching people how to take responsibility of their health again, which I think if we're going to turn stuff around here when it comes to the health in the U.S., that's really how it's going to have to happen.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You said one word that rings so true with me is responsibility, personal responsibility. When my patients that have been seeing me for a while, I don't have to take as long a time, but that first couple times I have a new patient and they have disease and illness or problems or things that will lead to disease and illness, it takes a while to coach them up and to explain things to them. And you have to explain the science behind it, because if you can't explain why it works, they're less likely to buy in and believe you. But a lot of times they says, well, can I do this or can I do that? They want, something that's not really healthy. Can I eat this? Can I eat that? And I said, well, yeah, you can, but it's up to you, and you won't, reap the benefits. And I said, whether you do it or not is not going to affect my life one way or another, but it is going to affect yours. And if you take the right steps and make the right decisions and form the right habits and eat the right foods and avoid the bad foods, then you will benefit. It'll be you that benefits, not me. It'll be you. Although I do benefit, because if someone comes back and sees me and they've lost 30 pounds and they're diabetic and we're getting them off diabetes medicines, it makes my day. It absolutely, I like high five them and hug them, and it just makes my day when my patients do that. And I have I have patients just about every week that come back and their lives have been dramatically changed and they've taken ownership of their health. So that's what I try to do. I try to make sure that they take ownership of their health, and they're the ones that are going to benefit, or they're the ones that are going to suffer, just based on what decisions they make.
Let's take a minute to talk about some of the sponsors and brands who support the show.
Who are you thinking?
I was thinking about Carnivore Bar. What are your thoughts on Carnivore Bar?
I mean, it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable product. We were lucky enough to have the founder, Philip Meese, on the show a few months ago, and he was able to send us a bunch of product when we started the relationship, and absolutely loved it. I mean, it's minimum ingredient product, beef, tallow, salt, and then they do have a honey flavored option as well. But it's so nice to have a bar that's like 3 to 4 ingredients. And like when you're following a carnivore diet, it's really tough to find products that are in line with that specific diet,
Yeah, for me, it kind of hits like the holy trinity of what you're looking for when you're looking for food. So it's nutrient dense, it's convenient, and it tastes great. And as you said, most people who are trying to eat healthy, the convenience factor is kind of a tough part. So just being able to have something you can grab on the go, know that you're going to have that nutrition for the day, it's huge.
Yeah, and we were lucky enough, we got to actually see their factory too in Missouri, and they're just doing things the right way. I love how they offer an option for like carnivore purists, where it's just beef, tallow, salt. And then they also have an animal-based option too. If you do want a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of variety, they have the honey in that option. And they're just people that are doing things the right way. They're very mission focused. They're carnivores themselves. And, we're always on the go. We're traveling. We've taken a bunch of flights together
to have a bar that has 30 grams of fat too, like that's huge from an energy density standpoint, right?
Yeah, he checks all the boxes, or the company checks all the boxes. And I just think the fact that they're sourcing from a regenerative farm as well, and Joyce Farms, just a win-win.
100%. So Carnivore Bar. So we got the affiliate link, and then it's code MAFIA for 10% off.
And then another one of our sponsors, one of our favorite farms, Holy Cow. What they're doing at Holy Cow is pretty remarkable. The relationships that they've built in the industry and how long they've been doing the grass-fed, grass-finished regenerative model is really innovative. They were one of the first people to be doing that and supplying whole foods early on. Just a great community farm, and also just product is something that speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think number one, to your point, Harry, they're just incredible people. We got to hear them speak at the Beef Initiative Conference in Colorado. We had never met them before, but just hearing Warren's story where they were following a standard American diet, he had a heart attack, and they were just looking for answers of like, how can we actually get healthier? Do I need to be dependent on medication? And they started changing their diets to incorporating more animal foods, and he completely reversed those symptoms of his stroke. And now they're just doing things the right way. They're grass finishing their beef. They're incorporating incredible practices. They have great relationships with the animals, and they're very passionate about just like connecting directly with the customer and also educating their customer on grass finished beef.
Yeah, and I think the best part is too, they're shipping nationally and trying to reach a bigger audience. So being able to not only supply beef nationally, but also educate people on the quality of good, clean, whole foods is just, it's an incredible mission.
How much do you love their beef bacon, by the way? I know that's your go-to.
Dude, it's one of the best things I've ever tasted.
It's that good.
No, honest to God, it's so good.
Holy cow.
Yeah. One of the other farms that supports us is Perennial Pastures, another regenerative farm out of San Diego. Our experience with Kevin Munoz, the owner, we had him on the show, a young first-generation rancher who's really empowered by this movement of regenerative agriculture and really wants to be a leader in the space. I think our conversation with him was so insightful, just in terms of how mission focused he is and how he really thinks about his farm as a business and wanting it to be here 50, 100 years down the road, even though he's just the first generation of it. And I think just being able to spend time with him out in San Diego was kind of the perfect indication of that, where we got to go have a meal with him at his house, hang out with his wife and kids. Like, what an amazing person. And I think his mission focus around raising really high quality beef and restoring nutrients to the soil is just one of those rare missions that I think everyone can get around.
Yeah, he has such a commitment to really feeding the local community in San Diego, in the San Diego County, first and foremost. But he's also passionate about feeding the community around the country. So I know they've invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources to being able to order beef in bulk on their website. So I know that they now offer quarter, half, whole cows directly off the website. They have that great ancestral blend ground beef product. So it actually has organ grinds mixed into the ground beef. So you're getting the benefits of like an ounce or so of organ meat, but because it's in the ground beef, you really can't taste it at all. And I think, to your point, Harry, just another amazing person. You know, Kev was someone that he was following a paleo diet in college and started realizing, wow, when I nourish my body with real foods, I feel amazing. Had a really successful stint in tech, but realized that there was just something else that he was passionate about. So he's one of those rare cases where, you know, he put his money where his mouth is, and he's a first generation farmer, just, you know, bootstrapping this thing, raising money, and just so passionate about feeding the community. Just an amazing guy.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on organ supplements, and what do you think about the company that supports our podcast, Optimal Carnivore?
Such a good question, man. I think organ meat is something that's gained a ton of notoriety the last few years, and for good reason. I don't want to speak for you, but I think both of us have had a ton of benefits just incorporating organ meats into our diet. I would say that, you know, we definitely prefer the raw source of organs, where we'll just, you know, chop up some liver and some heart, and, you know, there are different ways to prepare it. I think the raw source is the most nutrient dense, but, you know, we're fortunate that there are companies like Optimal Carnivore that exist that freeze dry organ capsules, so you can actually take them on the go. You know, there are a ton of times where we're traveling where we're not going to have access to raw organs. So I can throw a little Ziploc bag together of Optimal Carnivore and be good to go. And I think 6 pills is an ounce of organs, which is like the daily recommended amount that will give you a lot of those really good quality vitamins in there. So that's kind of how I think we've been using it. Did I miss anything there?
No, I think the fact that it just makes organs accessible to people. And I think that organs are generally just a food group that are underutilized when it comes to eating nose to tail. And the nature's vitamin is a perfect name for these organ foods. And I think a lot of people are pretty, in the mainstream object to eating organ meats. But when you put it in a pill form that doesn't taste bad, it's convenient, you can put it in your backpack. It makes things a lot easier. And I also think that just generally these brands Optimal Carnivore is focused on making people healthier, which is just such a strong mission. And, I think liver capsules is a great way to get people thinking about their health differently.
100%. There's probably someone that's listening to this right now and you're interested in organ meats, but the taste might make you a bit squeamish. You feel strange about eating raw foods. Maybe you cook liver and you don't like it. Maybe it has a metallic taste. I think that's also where the organ capsules play such a great role, is that you're still getting that nutrient density, but you're getting it in a very convenient capsule-like format, and it just takes away any of that squeamishness that you might have to the taste. It's just a great product. And also Richard, who runs Optimal Carnivore, he's started listening to the show really early on, and he's built his own organ supply chain and is just doing things the right way and really trying to support the right people in the space. So just proud to be associated with them, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for listening. Now we're going to go back to the show.
That's what makes everything you're saying is what makes Harrison and I really hopeful for the future, is knowing that there are doctors like yourself, Dr. Sean Baker, everything he's doing at Rivero, Phil Avadia comes to mind, Dr. Tro, in this world of decentralized medicine, where it really does seem like you're putting the onus back on the patient and you're saying, don't just blanket follow everything that I do, but I want to really coach you and teach you how to be the CEO of your own health, which is so powerful, because I think that there are a lot of patients in Western medicine that just feel like they need to blanket listen to their doctor. And if they prescribe me 4 to 5 different prescriptions, I'm going to take exactly what they tell me to take. And it's really such a shame that, we're not promoting diet and lifestyle, because it does seem like the more and more we dig into this world and talk to people like you, all these modern diseases and autoimmunity and things like that could really be prevented by taking your health into your own hands.
Oh, you're exactly right. I have several different types of patients. I have a lot of patients now that are seeking me out because of how I practice medicine, and they're more likely to listen to you and not want to take medications. But I have a lot of patients that's like, no, that's too tough. Just give me a pill. And it's sad. And we mask disease. We don't cure disease. We mask it. We treat it. But with diet and lifestyle, we can cure so many diseases. We can prevent and reverse diseases. Diabetes being, the main one that's easily preventable with diet and exercise. But diet is the main thing.
This conversation makes me think of something else it's more of like a problem of like the education system, where it's a psychological problem where we think, or we ask the question, like, what should I be doing, instead of like, how should I be thinking about this? Like, we don't have this internal compass anymore, or our education system fails us in terms of teaching us how to think instead of just giving us the answer. Like, I feel like those two paradigms, like, give me the answer and the solution versus teach me how to think through these types of problems, exist in not just the world of diet and nutrition. It's really like kind of a failure of our education system too.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of propaganda. Everybody gets hit with propaganda every day. The big food, big companies have so much money to spend, and they spend so much money in the media. Everybody thinks that cholesterol causes heart disease. Well, guess what? It doesn't. It's a very needed substance in our body. All of our hormones are made from it, our cellular mechanisms, our brain. And a lot of people have lost the ability to think. And I'm pretty critical of medicine right now. I'm pretty down on medicine right now because of how this whole pandemic was just swallowed hook, line, and sinker by physicians. And I think, medical schools are very much influenced by money. research money, grants, and things like that. And so they've gotten away from anything natural, and it's all about big pharma and cures. And we're turning out a new group of doctors that are great at taking tests, great at memorization, great at regurgitating what they have been told, but they're not very good at critically analyzing things and looking at individual data for themselves. They're just remembering what they're told, and it's really scary for me to think that a lot of people go to doctors like that. I mean, the vaccine was the biggest example of just a propaganda war that convinced everybody that everybody should take this vaccine, when all you had to do is sit back and look at it and say, hey, this therapy has never been used before in mankind. There have been no long-term safety studies, yet you're telling me it's safe? And a lot of people just bought it. And a lot of physicians just bought it. And I think more and more are understanding. I mean, how can you not now with all the bad data that's coming out about it? But it really has been a disappointment for me. And the refreshing thing is you guys are sitting here. You're not yet 30, and you've figured out a lot more things than a lot of other people that have great scientific degrees. I mean, eating beef for one thing. I mean, look at people that eat beef and look at people that eat massive amounts of carbohydrates. You can tell who's the healthiest.
100%.
And you've thought about it because you've been hit with propaganda your entire life. And I commend both of you guys. I really do. I think you guys are awesome. So thanks.
We appreciate it.
Yeah.
This attack on critical thinking is so interesting, because even your first podcast with us, it came with a warning, and I don't even think we talked about COVID.
We barely touched on it.
And it came with a warning label saying, do your research on COVID for yourself, which, that's just another thing that's being propped up by what, you use the word propaganda, but it's like, there's a lot of technology behind what's enabling this propaganda and what's enabling someone like yourself who's just trying to think critically through, what's happening, trying to actually bring an honest representation of some criticism to the pandemic, and the fact that, those videos, those podcasts that you were on where you didn't even mention COVID still comes with a warning label is crazy.
Yeah, and what censorship? That's profound censorship and coercion. People don't want to say something that they actually think and believe because they're afraid they're going to be censored or, kicked off Twitter, kicked off YouTube or whatever. And it really destroys the thinking process, and it takes away our freedom. What this country was founded on was freedom, and it takes away our freedom of speech, and it's really a nasty, coercive censorship is what it is, because people are so afraid to even touch those subjects. Early on in the pandemic, I would post articles and thoughts on just scientific evidence, and I was attacked by other people on the media. I mean, people, laypersons. And it didn't really bother me. And now I am posting scientific papers, scientific evidence, talks, and it's amazing. I just do it for, try to get, hopefully people will read it, but I also do it sort of as a self-amusement, because when I post a picture of my grandchild or my cattle, I get hundreds of likes. And I post one of these things that it's a taboo, something taboo that we've been basically ingrained not to touch and not to talk about. And you get 3 or 4 likes. Some of your very best friends like it, or some of the people that are truth warriors like it, but people won't touch it.
No.
I mean, even people that agree with you will not touch it. And that's That's really bad in a society.
It's a crime. It's cowardice. But we're so encouraged by people like you and your wife Ann that are willing to actually speak up, because you're trying to get to the root cause of what's going on. And that's, I think, one of the biggest crimes about this whole situation is it's like you guys were having success treating patients through your practices, talking to them about metabolic health and prescribing some of these alternative treatment methods. And you're not even in a position to be able to promote that due to censorship or you going against the grain of Western medicine.
Yep.
But you're having success though, and you still can't talk about it.
And absolutely, this pandemic has brought a lot of people together, has brought us together, it has brought me together with physicians all over the world, all over the country that I would have not have known. And there's an ophthalmologist in Houston, Texas, Richard Urso, and he was testifying in Congress. And this is probably one of the greatest lines I've ever heard. He said, he goes, if I come up against a disease or a problem, and I've never treated it before, I usually call or consult someone who has successfully treated that disease or problem. Never once have I consulted the FDA or the CDC on how to treat this disease. And he's so true. I mean, that was the problem with treatment in this pandemic, is we were being told how to treat something by bureaucrats who really don't treat disease. And unfortunately, they're obviously captured by big pharma. Whereas we should be listening to the people who are actually on the front lines, who are actually treating disease, who are actually having successes treating disease, not by, some bureaucrat.
What were some of the things, the practices that you and Ann were performing to really have success with treating COVID patients over the last few years?
Well, we promote health and wellness. As you know, COVID is an inflammatory disorder. The virus doesn't kill you. The inflammatory response was what was killing you, and the blood clots. And chronic disease is also an inflammatory disorder. Obesity is an inflammatory disorder. Diabetes is an inflammatory disorder. So those were the people that were at highest risk of dying. And by promoting health and wellness, exercise, getting outside in the sunlight, those are simple, really simple things. Exercise, getting outside in the sunlight, eating properly, cutting out carbohydrates and sugars and refined foods, eating a whole food diet, mainly meat-based. Those all improve your immune system and reduce inflammation. And guess what? They reduce your risk of dying from COVID-19. We did not hear any of that from the central control of medicine. We heard, go home, isolate, be afraid of your neighbor, be afraid to be around your neighbor, wear your mask, and if you get really sick, then we'll put you in the hospital. Never before in the history of mankind have we had a disease that was treated in this manner. Never before have we had a disease where you were told not to treat early. And, there's simple things that can be done, like vitamin D levels. It's almost unheard of for someone to be admitted to the intensive care unit from COVID-19 if their vitamin D level is above 50. So making sure everyone's vitamin D level is optimized. Wearing the mask is just counterintuitive. If you have a mask on, you're rebreathing virus, okay? You're rebreathing virus. Take the mask off, get outside, breathe clean, fresh air. When I had COVID in December of 2020, we were here at the house, and I was off that week because that was the start of our week of breeding cattle, and we had to get all the cattle in separate groups to breed the bulls or artificially inseminate them. And so I had to go out on a daily basis. And I remember 2 mornings in a row, I just felt awful, and I did not want to go outside, and I did not want to get out of bed, but I had to. And I went outside. Within 30 minutes of being outside, my energy levels improved dramatically. I felt fantastic. I didn't know why, but part of it was breathing clean, fresh air, and part of it was being in the sunlight. There's certain wavelengths of ultraviolet radiation that actually inactivate or kill the virus and the spike protein. I didn't know that at that point in time, but I realized it, and those were some of the early things that I told my patients to do. Never wear a mask. It's not doing you any help, and it's definitely not doing anybody around you any good. And then we had, the medications that we're seeing successes all over the world, reported all over the world, with medicines such as hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. So we started implementing those into our practice. And they basically were lifesavers in this pandemic. And it breaks my heart, all the people that were denied these medications, especially early on when you can prevent serious disease and hospitalization. Millions of people died because those drugs were not available, and doctors were afraid to prescribe them, or pharmacies refused to fill the prescriptions. We've never seen anything like this before in the history of mankind.
Wow.
You said doctors were afraid to prescribe it. Did you feel like the reaction from like fellow doctors, was there a certain degree of people who were concerned and not saying anything or not acting kind of, against what was kind of the prevailing narrative? Or was it just like a very small subset of people who were willing to step out and start working against, providing solutions like hydroxychloroquine and
I can't tell you what was going through the minds of the people that did not accept those medicines as treatments. I have my suspicions. I mean, everybody is different. But there was definitely an overtone of, oh, you better not do that. The man is looking over your shoulder. He's going to get you. The boogeyman's going to get you. I can't tell you, I had conversations with other physicians when we first started seeing data, positive data about hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, and they never would say much. They would, you could tell they didn't really want to talk about it. But then after it got to be a while, I knew that I really couldn't discuss it with many of my fellow physicians. So I just did my thing and tried to do what was right by my patients. But it was, you feel a lot of pressure, a lot of tension, especially when you work for a healthcare organization. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of physicians did not prescribe it, is because they basically felt pressure from their large healthcare organization, who they were getting paid by, not to prescribe it.
How many physicians behind closed doors would, whether they're friends, colleagues, et cetera, would tell you privately that they agree with a lot of the messaging that you're promoting, but feel this pressure by big medicine to push a certain narrative?
Not many. Actually, I've gotten a lot of messages from my colleagues recently, and very supportive messages. And they, you can tell that they appreciate what I did and thought what I did was right, and that I've been treated unfairly by certain people.
Mm-hmm. Were you ever in a position where you were actually able to prescribe and treat with hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, or was that always kind of squashed?
I always treated with hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin whenever I could get them. We went through a short period of time where pharmacies wouldn't fill your prescriptions, and the big chain pharmacies still won't fill your prescriptions for those unless it's another diagnosis. But we have independent pharmacies and compounding pharmacies that we regularly use those medications. It's interesting because when President Trump came out and talked about hydroxychloroquine, there was such a negative media backlash. I thought it was because it was President Trump and everybody was against President Trump, but it wasn't. It was big pharma. It was from the top, and that was one of the times when the light went on in my head that there's something wrong with this pandemic. Something's not being treated as it should be. And then I started just, paying more attention, looking for other sources. Then I did this initially. I was like everybody else. I didn't know what to do when it first came out. But that was when one of the lights went off in my head that something not right, because they were attacking hydroxychloroquine as being severely dangerous. And I knew in my mind and I knew in my heart and soul that I've been prescribing hydroxychloroquine, never been told it was dangerous, never told not to prescribe it. And then when ivermectin came on the scene, and I knew that it had been used worldwide with such a great safety record, that there were reasons that public health responded the way they did that had nothing to do with the health of the general public. It's really emotionally devastating to go through that. And, I would say my wife and I have treated many, many people, both prevention of COVID, a couple thousand probably, prevention of COVID, early treatment of COVID, long haul COVID, and vaccine injury, and have had great success with the protocols that we have used. I consider probably Pierre Corey and Paul Merrick probably the greatest authorities. There may be someone better, but they're the ones that I know that have come up with the greatest protocols and the most helpful protocols and the most useful protocols, and we follow them to pretty much. And they're true heroes, true American heroes.
Well, we really appreciate the honesty around this discussion, because I think it's truly like important to document this type of thing, given kind of where we've been with the whole COVID narrative. One of the things that I was curious to ask you is, I've had a bunch of friends who got vaccinated and have reached out to me in terms of things that they can do to support their long-term health, because they're actually worried that they got the vaccine, which is such a shame. I mean, and my honest advice was just focus on what you can control, which is your day-to-day lifestyle. But I'm curious if you had any thoughts on that, just people who have gotten the vaccine and are just thinking about their health in terms of
well, if they're having any problems, they should try to reach out to a physician or a healthcare provider that is experienced in treating vaccine injury. And I'd be happy to see any of them. But basically, the basics with health continue to be the basics. There's a process that the body has that heals itself. It's called autophagy. Your body has basically cells, and your immune system basically cleanses your body. Autophagy is where you destroy abnormal proteins, inflammation, abnormal pathogens. And it's stimulated by, several things. I mean, ivermectin stimulates it, but things that people can do every day. And that is intermittent fasting, going long periods of time without eating. That is 8 hours of sleep at night. That is regular exercise. And that is a healthy, animal-based, high-protein, extremely low-carb diet plan. And those all stimulate autophagy. Getting out in the sunlight, that stimulates autophagy. So those are the simple things. Those are the things that make you healthy otherwise anyway.
Right.
The body can repair itself. The longer you go with not being exposed to the spike protein, the better. Your body will clear it, hopefully, eventually. Some people are less fortunate than others that have serious long COVID or long vaccine injury symptoms, and we see those rather frequently. And they usually will respond, most of them will respond to a protocol. And a lot of that includes, what we've just talked about, the exercise, the sleep, fasting, and a healthy diet.
Wow.
Avoiding sugar, avoiding carbohydrates.
Why is it so important to avoid sugar and carbohydrates with autophagy?
I can't tell you to get down to the cellular mechanism, but when you eat sugar, you eat carbohydrates, your body absorbs that in a very rapid manner. It's rapidly absorbed and your blood sugar shoots up really high. Well, unless you're running a marathon or something like that, you're not going to burn that off. And in response, the body produces high levels of insulin. And insulin's job is to attach to the sugar molecule and place it into the cells. It places it into your muscle cells, and it produces glycogen, which is, energy for the muscle to use in reserve. Well, when all the glycogen stores become completely saturated, then it produces fat. Okay, fat around the waistline, in the subcutaneous area, but it also produces fat in the internal organs. And this is very destructive to the internal organs and their normal function. But also high levels of insulin also cause inflammatory cells to rise rather rapidly. It causes sodium and water retention and elevation in blood pressure. It's just sort of a circular chain mechanism, and you're more likely to develop obesity, organ damage, insulin resistance, and then eventually type 2 diabetes mellitus. Causes something called metabolic syndrome, where blood pressure goes up, triglycerides go up, inflammation goes up, and then eventually you destroy your inner organs with obesity, and you develop diabetes.
Got it.
Do you think about, if there were to be another sort of pandemic, like have we learned our lessons, or have we shifted enough, to people who aren't kind of captured in thinking like we need centralized authorities to give us some sort of solution?
Well, I think it'll be less, do I think people can get fooled? Yeah.
Yeah.
Will they get fooled? Who knows? We'll see. I hope not. I hope people, but to this day, there are people, centralized medicine continues to produce these propaganda videos that get your vaccine. That's the only way to get out of this pandemic. Well, that's obviously been proven false. I mean, studies are showing now that not only can you get the vaccine, get the virus if you've had the vaccine or so many boosters, but you're at higher risk for getting the virus and higher risk for having serious illness. Yet people are still believing that you need to get your vaccine.
Yeah.
Sean Penn, I saw him on some social media thing, and he was talking about people that didn't get vaccinated should be thrown in jail.
Yeah.
Where is he living?
Not in this reality.
No.
Yeah.
Where is he living?
Yeah.
The good thing is that, as part of when I see someone as a patient, I ask them, have you been vaccinated? Not because I want them to get vaccinated, but I need to know for their health. I need to know, what potential things could be a problem. And they say, oh yeah, I've been vaccinated, but I'm not getting any more. Occasionally, they come in and say, yeah, I've been vaccinated. I'm up to date on my boosters, and I haven't gotten the latest one, but I'm getting ready to. That's really a minority right now. Most people have huge buyer's remorse.
Interesting.
Huge buyer's remorse.
Yeah. And the other thing too, to Harry's point, is if we just continue to normalize metabolic dysfunction, where 88% of us are metabolically unhealthy, I don't really know if there is going to be a different effect.
Well, just think how many lives could have been saved, not only in this pandemic, but in future decades, if an emphasis had been placed on metabolic health and wellness. But you never heard anything of that.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because big food makes huge profits off cheap carbohydrates, and big pharma makes huge profits on selling the cures. And they pretty much control the airwaves now.
Yeah.
They control the news organizations. They give so much money to the news organizations. They control the medical schools.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
I think I'm a good example of that too. When I was flared up with ulcerative colitis, I was on that drug Remicade, which is a biologic, which is shown to repress your immune system. Fortunately, I was able to get off of that, I feel, because of everything I was doing with carnivore and taking control of the food I was putting into my system. But I think that's a good example too of what if I was, continuing to be on this drug during the pandemic and gotten COVID. It's just interesting to think about some of those things.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You're the poster child for metabolic health and a carnivore diet. You really are. Diabetes, autoimmune disease, psychiatric illness can be improved so much through diet and reduction in your insulin levels. Anxiety, chronic fatigue, irritable bowel is the big, huge one. You would not believe the number of middle-aged people, middle-aged women that come into me with a long-standing history of irritable bowel syndrome. They've had thousands upon thousands of dollars of workups and tests. Nothing abnormal has ever been found, and they've been put on medicine to control their symptoms. And they come to me, and we change their diet, and they get off medication, and they think I'm the smartest guy in the world. You cure somebody with irritable bowel syndrome, and you'll have a friend for life.
Oh my gosh. And it's legitimately life-changing.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom has a good friend who listens to the show, and she's battled IBS for years, to the point where it's like when she's having some type of a flare-up, it's like you can't leave the house.
Yeah.
Like you need to be near your toilet because you don't know what's going to happen. And then it's like when you go to the pantry, it's just all processed crap found in the inner aisle of the grocery store. And I just hope that at some point that we can convince her to go carnivore, because there's so many people that have IBS that have tried this diet that have had just such incredible life-changing success. Like, damn, I wish everyone just knew how good it feels to like be able to take control of your GI through the food you're putting into your system and just be able to live life the way that it's supposed to be lived.
But it really speaks to where we've gotten to with our understanding of what food actually is, which is why we are excited, or we're excited to have you back on the show, because you sit between these two worlds where you're a cattleman and rancher creating food on one hand, and then you're also, a doctor as well. So it's such a, like, we don't even really understand what we should be putting in our body to support long-term health. Or we do, but we don't address it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've gotten so people look at food as entertainment, and it should be looked as it in nutrition. You know, I go back and forth from strict carnivore to mostly carnivore, but sometimes my diet, like a lot of people, isn't as good as it should be, and I feel horrible. It was like we were talking earlier. I was at a Christmas party not long ago, and we had a very healthy meal, and I felt great. And then they put out the dessert tray, and I ate a couple high carb food desserts, and then all of a sudden my stomach that's all I could think about was my stomach and how bloated I felt. And that's completely curable by what you put in your stomach.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what we do to ourselves for mouth pleasure, eating for social norms or something like that. And something we were saying in your kitchen, and something Harry and I talk about all the time, is like, when I'm as close to strict carnivore as possible, just pure animal products, salt, cooking with tallow, water, my stomach will feel the best that it's ever felt. And then any step towards deviating from that, whether it's this cup of coffee or some type of a carbohydrate or even some fruit or anything processed, it's like I just will not feel my best. There's some price to pay. So that's what we try and tell people, is it's like you can have those foods and you can have the Christmas cookies, and like, you know, you need to enjoy your life as well. But just know that there is some price and some cost that's going to be associated with you deviating from that.
You're exactly right. And take control and take ownership. My patients, can I have this? Can I have that? And it's like, you can have anything you want.
Yeah.
But if you want to be healthy, you'll figure out what's best and what's not.
Yeah.
One of the things we were interested in talking to you about was just kind of like the perspective of the U.S. Cattlemen's Association. I think Brett and I were both saying in the car ride over here, we're like, we don't really, I guess, like fully understand or appreciate like where you guys are trying to educate, or like what the purpose is of the organization, and just knowing that you play a huge role in kind of the direction of that, and knowing your perspective on medicine, the food system, nutrition. I imagine there's some, mission around kind of healthy people, healthy food, but would love to just learn more about what you guys are doing, because we know you guys just had that great conference that we were unfortunately unable to attend.
Well, United States Cattlemen's Association was founded in 2007 as a result of basically cattle ranching not being sustainable from an economic standpoint. As you already know, we have 4 major multinational packers that control a significant segment of our industry, basically where the cattle go from live cattle transition to in the grocery store. And they sit at the top of that structure. And basically they do not have to compete with one another. There's no competition, so you don't have a free market economy. And so they're basically paying what they want to pay for cattle, and they're charging what they want to charge for the beef that they produce. And for decades, it's been like this. And cattle ranchers are some of the smartest best business people as far as squeezing out a small profit margins that I know, some of the smartest people that I know. And our main mission is to restore that free market so that cattle ranching can be a profitable, sustainable industry for years to come. I don't know if I told you this the last time we were talking about, but why I got involved in the United States Cattlemen's Association. I've been obsessed with cattle and cattle genetics since I was a little kid. And my dad and I used to go on trips, and evening, summer, pasture, we'd go out in the pasture and look at cattle and discuss. And he said, "Son, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "Dad, I want to ranch and I want to raise cattle." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, you better find a damn good job." And it's true. I mean, unfortunately, the cattle industry is a subsidized industry, not by the federal government, but by outside income. 85% of cattle farms and ranchers have someone in the family that works off the ranch, works off the cattle ranch. And those that don't, there's special circumstances is all I got to say.
Yeah.
And so cattle ranching is not economically viable and sustainable in the long term. The amount of money, amount of land that you have to have for your initial investment, and then the amount of time and work, it's a lot easier to get a job in town or telecommute and make a lot more money and have a lot more free time. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing fewer and fewer cattle producers. Ranchers are selling out, dying off. Younger generation's not getting into it. And I've been talking about this for the last 15 years. This is a food security crisis, and this is a national security issue. Because right now our industry is controlled by 4 multinational packers. They have not a care in the world about the health of the communities. Okay. They don't have anything. Whatever is financially expedient to them is what they're going to put their money behind. They were highly invested in fake food. Highly invested in fake food. Thank God these alternative burgers have not tasted very good. They're certainly not healthy for you. But they were highly invested in fake food, and that just shows you that they really have no conviction about anything other than the mighty dollar. And if we continue on this trend, if we continue to not have young people like yourself who want to get into cattle ranching, don't do it because it's not economically viable, then who is going to produce our food? Who's going to take care of our land? And we'll be dependent upon foreign countries and 4 big multinational corporations that really they've already proven that they don't really care about your health and wellness, because the big food corporations are producing cheap carbohydrates and addicting people to sugar, and we have more chronic illness than ever. And it's cost this nation billions of dollars in healthcare costs. So this is a national security issue, and everybody should be concerned with it. COVID-19 probably brought it to the forefront because there were we've never seen shortages of beef in the grocery stores before, but we saw them, and we saw skyrocketing food prices. We see high inflation prices as far as cattle, and these corporations used imported beef from other countries that do not have the same standards that we do as far as labor laws, chemicals and pesticide laws. They don't have the same standards that we do, and they're bringing this beef into the country, and they're actually fooling the American consumer into believing that it's American beef. It gets a USDA stamp. Most people think that USDA stamp means it's U.S. food, but it also can be labeled product of the USA. And that is just a complete lie and a complete wrong. And most Americans don't understand that. And we try to get that out. We lobby Congress. We lobby Congress on competition, on changing the laws, making it a more level playing field. But to be quite honest, the multinationals have so much money and so much power. It's really a slow road to get much change there. We've had some small victories in Congress, and that's why the beef initiative and marketing directly and locally and bypassing this system is so important. I see so important. We don't need Congress as much. We don't need the government as much. We do need them to pass laws that will enable us to perform in this type of market. But it's going to bypass the packers, and we're going to produce a healthier product, and it's going to benefit the economy of rural America. Rural America is really suffering because rural America depends on an agricultural economy, and people are leaving rural America for the cities. And people that live in rural America live there for one of the things is they love their freedom. And we're becoming more of a society that is more of a dependent society. I want these services. I want my trash picked up. I want a grocery store right down the road. I want my roads cleaned right away. And that's what you get in the city. You get services and you have to pay for them. But when you depend on the governments for so many services, then the government can take that away and hold it over your head. And rural Americans are much more free thinkers and more self-sufficient than people that live in the city in general. I'm not saying that's a hard, fast rule, but we're going to lose all that, and we're going to be dependent on other countries for our food, like we are for energy, like we are for manufactured goods, and it can't be a good thing. So the beef initiative that bypasses the packing industry and the monopoly that they have will not only improve people's health through eating good, healthy, whole foods, but it'll also help rural America and the United States of America thrive more economically.
Brooke, when we're looking at things through the eyes of a rancher, what is it actually like having to deal with a packer? And the reason why I ask that is that we've spent a lot of time speaking about the corporate packers, but obviously, we don't have skin in the game being ranchers. We're really enthusiasts that are very interested in talking about a lot of these things. But what is it actually like to be a rancher, to kind of be beholden to this like kind of silent monopoly that a lot of people don't know about?
Well, I can't speak to that from a direct standpoint because I've never dealt with a packer in my life. I have friends that have, and they'll have cattle that are ready, that are really good cattle, superior cattle, and they can't get a bid on them because the packer wants to control the price with other. They have what we call captive supplies. They work with these big corporate feed yards, and they have their supply known for months in advance, and they control the market that way. And they control the market with imported beef, but it's really a dirty business. It really is a dirty business. You think you produce a good product, somebody's going to want it, but if they want to squeeze you out, they're not going to bid on it no matter what. And it's destroying lives and destroying, generational farmers and ranchers.
And you've been able to avoid that because your family's always been very intentional about building relationships with local packers and processors that you can use, right?
Well, we deal with we're in the seed stock business. So we sell to people who sell to people who sell to the packers. And it's a big trickle-down effect. If they're not making money for their calves, they're not going to buy my seed stock at a higher price. They can't afford them. They can't afford them at what they're worth because they're not being paid. So that's how it affects me. So it definitely affects me severely, but not directly. It's through the ripple effects of not having a free market economy in the fat cattle market because everybody feeds off everybody else, and it reduces competition. Now, our lower end beef that we do sell as food, it's actually been good for me for that. Why? Because I can get a lot more money direct marketing those cattle to people such as yourself and Harry, because you're getting a better product And you're not really paying retail prices, but you're paying a lot better than what I could get if I had to take them to the sale and have the packer bid on them because they wouldn't bid on them.
What excited you about the meetings or the meeting that you guys had in Nashville? What sort of things were being talked about there that maybe you hadn't heard being discussed, or what was being emphasized at that meeting?
Well, we talked about the normal stuff, trying to restore free market competition. Chuck Grassley and Deb Fisher introduced a bill last year that's still in Congress. We hope it gets passed that requires packers to actually bid on an open market as opposed to have captive supply on a certain percentage of their kill in each plant each week. And we think that'll help restore competition. Truth in labeling is always a very, very important thing to us, because if we cannot identify our product, then we can't get paid for our product. If our product is a generic product, we can't get paid for it, as opposed to if we can accurately identify our product.
Right.
So those truth in labeling and restoring competition are huge issues. But this year, through my contacts with people like yourself, Marty Bent, Texas Slim, who I was introduced to all of you all by my daughter and son-in-law, I thought it would be good and I started learning about the beef. It used to be called the Texas Beef Initiative, but now it's the Beef Initiative. And I started learning about these movements, and I was just, wow, these are young people that actually want to eat right, eat healthy. They care about their freedom. They care about good, sound monetary policy. And guess what? They love beef. And so we had a panel called Beef, Bitcoin, and Decentralization of Our Food System. And let's see if I can remember everybody that was on the panel. My son-in-law, Matt, was a moderator. He's an attorney and has been basically in the Bitcoin world, being an attorney in the Bitcoin world for quite a few years. Friend of his he met that you all also know well is Marty Bent, who runs a podcasting service and has a newsletter, TFTC, Tales from the Crypt. Then the next person in line was Jason Rich, who is a first-generation rancher from Colorado. And so he's like really an anomaly, a first-generation rancher. You don't see many of those because of the cost that it comes to. And he has a direct marketing program where he sells grass-fed beef and does quite well in western Colorado. And he's also adopted Bitcoin and is what I would consider a quote, a Bitcoiner. Then there was Texas Slim, who is the visionary and the father of the Beef Initiative. And he travels all around. He first was just doing it in Texas, and now he's going around other sites in the country promoting this concept of partnership and relationships between the consumer and the rancher, and showing the consumer how the rancher is an environmentalist. We say in ranching, the rancher is the original environmentalist. We're environmentalists. We're not extreme environmentalists, like believe a lot of things that we don't think are true, but we take care of the land and we take care of our animals because that's our life. So Slim was there, and then Cole Bolton, K&C Cattle Company. Yes. He actually has a rather large operation where he has a packing plant, and basically he goes from grass to table. And then Matt Odell, who is just a brilliant young man. I'd always heard about Matt. I'd never met him until a couple weekends ago, and he was on the panel as well. He works with Marty, and he has, I don't know, a lot of, you all know the terminology. I don't know the terminology, but that was our panel. And they talked about how we could form a partnership between ranchers and Bitcoiners and direct to market access, and basically improve our freedom, improve our economic situation, improve our health through eating whole, healthy foods, and try to fix this god-awful monetary policy that we have, where we just print dollars after dollars after dollars, and it's not backed up by anything.
Such an incredible diverse list of panelists that you guys had on that. How was the reception from just cattlemen that were there that maybe were not familiar with Bitcoin, but can speak to decentralization?
There was skepticism.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people that I heard great positive comments from, but there was skepticism because it's something brand new. And it's like, when I first heard about Bitcoin, it's like, what? Well, what's, but you got to learn about it. You learn. And then the more I look at it and the more I look at the problems that we're facing in this country, and it's an obvious solution. It's an obvious solution. I mean, look what happened in Canada when, the truckers were striking. What'd they do? They froze their assets. They basically negated their ability to do a constitutional thing such as strike, and they froze their assets. They looked at them as terrorists. And if we operated in Bitcoin, I guess maybe they could freeze it, but I don't see how they could freeze it if you have control of your Bitcoin, if you don't own it on an exchange.
Do you think ranchers are naturally thinking about the brokenness of money, or how money plays a role in what's happening in the world of beef?
Some are and some aren't. Some are just working so hard and just focused on what they're doing that they don't have a lot of time for anything else. It's been frustrating for me as the president of the United States Cattlemen's Association, and now I'm past president, of the apathy of a lot of ranchers in trying to fix what's the problem. They're so caught up in working all the time and doing their own thing. They're all independent-minded people. And they don't feel like they have the time or the resources to get involved very much. One thing that really bugs me to no end is when someone will come up and say, "Hey, are you guys going to be able to get country of origin labeling passed?" You guys, like it's my responsibility. Yeah. Well, I've taken this on as my responsibility, but it should be everybody's responsibility that cares about it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say to everything that you guys are saying, like if we're looking at it through the lens of like country of origin labeling, what can consumers or carnivores like Harry and I, or people that are listening to the show, be doing to help get that passed?
One, you can make your representative in Washington and also state legislatures know that these are very important issues. Voters count. Okay, that's one thing. Okay. Two, when you go to the meat counter, you can demand to know where this animal comes from. And most of the people that are selling it at the meat counter don't know where it came from.
No.
They'll see the label on it. And they say, oh, yeah, this is, but it can be falsely labeled. So demand truth in labeling. Because right now, when we lost country of origin labeling in 2015 and live cattle prices dropped within 40% within a level of 2 weeks, and it just was devastating, for some reason, and I can't find out where this rule came, but the bureaucracy that runs this country has a ruling that reverted to its old ruling that beef in the grocery store can be labeled as product of the USA, not if it was born, raised, and processed here. Not only that, but if it was born somewhere else, sent here either in a live carcass or in a whole carcass or even in boxed beef, if it's changed significantly in this country, within our borders, it can be labeled product of the USA. And their definition of significant change is slicing or repackaging. I mean, that's pretty ridiculous. And the average consumer has no idea.
Right.
And I don't think the average consumer would agree with that.
No.
Totally. They'd be upset, I think.
And so I think just making this known, you guys got a platform. Mm-hmm. You can talk about it.
Definitely.
And broadcast it. But it's going to take a group effort, and cattle ranchers are not big enough for this to make a huge impact. It's gonna have to be a relationship and a partnership between concerned consumers and citizens of this United States that pay attention to this issue. Mm-hmm. Because if they don't, they're going to continue to get fed the same crap, and soon there's going to be more and more shortages of food in this country, and the prices are going to go up, and they're going to be eating something from some foreign land that they don't know where it came from.
Ann and Weldon Warren of Holy Cow Beef out of Lubbock, Texas, do a great job of addressing what you're saying, where they've mentioned to us that they've sold grass-finished beef to Whole Foods for almost 20 years, I think the number is, and how, their, Whole Foods was started in Austin, Texas, and they love to say how back in the day, like in the 70s and 80s, you could go to your Whole Foods and the employees that worked there were passionate about health and wellness, and you could go to the butcher and they could tell you the exact farm that it was raised at was a grass-fed, grass-finished, all these incredible details about the product. Now you go to Whole Foods, and I like to just ask the butcher casually just because I try and test and experiment to see how much they actually know. Sometimes you'll get a farm, but a lot of times they'll just say, oh, it's from some farm in Nebraska or something like that. And it does make me wonder,
they don't know where it comes from.
They don't know where it comes from. And is it even raised in Nebraska, or is it imported from Brazil or Argentina and processed there, and they're able to say that it comes from that state?
Yeah. Well, when you develop a relationship with a rancher, you can visit that rancher. He'd be more than happy to show you what he does and how the animals are raised and where they come from, what they get fed. But it's not that way when you go to the grocery store at all.
Yeah.
And just about everything that we purchase nowadays has a label on where it came from.
Right.
Except for beef and pork.
Yeah, the labeling and just like consumer education seems like it's another thing that we're kind of just outsourcing and not letting the consumer take responsibility for it, but we're also not giving accurate information at the same time, or like the information is just very unclear given the labeling laws.
It's not even clear. It's deceitful.
Yeah, it's
deceitful. It's deceitful.
Yeah. Are you hopeful that we can, independent groups can help educate and everything you're just talking about?
I think if there's a will, there's a way, and we're seeing progress. Unfortunately, we're not seeing progress as far as what the ranchers are being paid because of the monopoly, and it's going to be slow. But I'm really excited about things such as the beef initiative and selling beef directly to the consumer. I think it's a no-brainer in that it's going to allow that rancher to be profitable and continue to be in business, but the consumer will be consuming and eating a much healthier product, non-processed food. If it's processed, it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And big food has addicted so many people to sugar. Go to farmers markets and buy your food at farmers markets.
Totally. Yeah. And I know that in the lens of nutrition, you guys were able to have Dr. Sean Baker speak at the conference, which is awesome. I know all three of us are just we're huge fans of his work, and I know he's a close colleague of yours. Was this the first year that you guys had done a panel on nutrition and carnivore diets and things like that at the Cattlemen's event?
Sean had been to one of our meetings in Billings, Montana, about 2016 or 17, in the fall of 2016, 17, 18, something like that. And that's where I first met him. And that's where he convinced me to go on the carnivore diet. And he is absolutely the biggest, best spokesman for beef that there is. Absolutely. And it is truly a superfood. And we've been led to believe that it's harmful. And even our very own checkoff plays into that because if you see a checkoff related advertisement, they talk about eating lean beef as part of your, does that say that fat is bad? That's what it says to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That fat's bad.
Right.
And fat is not bad. Fat is part of our, that is so nutritious to our brain, our body, our immune system. Fat is extremely healthy. Even the American College of Cardiology several years ago came out with a statement stating that there is no credible evidence to suggest that restricting dietary fat improves your health in any way at all. And I submit it harms your health, especially when you replace it with cheap processed carbs and sugar, which are addictive and which are the cause for a lot of the chronic illnesses we see, especially type 2 diabetes mellitus.
Yeah. I have vivid memories of being a kid and eating a ribeye and like very distinctly cutting around the fat and just leaving it there, because that's what my parents were telling me to do, a standard American diet. And now I think like when I eat a ribeye, it's it's like the first thing I want to go after because I know that that's where all the nutrient density actually is. And you think about probably all the waste that's also occurring in the ranching industry, people that are just, yet you can go to a butcher and get these fat trimmings and scraps for free and render it into tallow. And there's just so much incredible energy that's being wasted in the fat.
Yep. You're exactly right. You know, I go back a little bit further than you guys go back. And I just remember in the 1970s, you look at pictures of people in the 1970s when I grew up and the 80s, and you look at people now and it's scary. You know, the average woman today weighs more than the average man did in 1978. Pretty scary.
That's crazy.
It's not because they've gotten more muscular.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also scary to me that people are so uncomfortable coming to their own conclusions on these like nutrition topics. It just feels like so circular. Like even the American Heart Association comes out saying saturated fat isn't all that bad, but people still criticize the American Heart Association for saying that, and then it like discredits it.
Not the American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology. American Heart Association is captured by Big Pharma. They would never say that.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. They want everybody on Lipitor.
Yeah. But no one even knows that they said that, to your point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not widely distributed at all.
No, not at all. And a lot of doctors don't even. I mean, you know, it just bugs me to no end when you have cardiologists that tell your patients to eat a low-fat diet and don't get them off carbs. But there are a lot of very good free-thinking, I don't want to use the word progressive, but free-thinking, critical thinking physicians in the world that are promoting this, and more and more and more coming to the, you know, see the light.
Totally.
It's great.
We always go back to, we've had Dr. Gary Fetke on the podcast and his wife Belinda, and he's a surgeon in Australia and Tasmania, and he's cutting off diabetics' feet because they're so obese. And he talks on the show, he talked about like the sound of like actually dropping a foot or a limb into a bucket and how chilling it was. And he had his own instance going low carb and cured. I forget what he had. I don't know if he was overweight or obese. I forget what it was.
Remember.
But he went low carb, had an amazing outcome from that. And he starts advising his patients on nutrition and is literally getting type 2 diabetics off of insulin. Yep. And then is being pursued by the Australian medical boards. Same thing with Tim Noakes. I mean, it's not incredibly dissimilar to a lot of the stuff that you and Ann have experienced. Sean Baker, all these people that are practicing alternative medicine, when all you're trying to do is make your patients healthier and teach them that the food in their body has unbelievable health outcome. It's just incredible.
We're practicing evidence-based medicine. It's just different evidence. It's not bought and paid for evidence, but we are practicing what we see with success. You know, science takes a lot of ways to produce science. One is the randomized control studies, but unfortunately they can be designed by the person that's paying for them to come out like they want them to come out. Most of the science that I practice is through observation. And some of the greatest scientists in the history of the world have been great observationists. And I see what works. I see what makes sense. I also use it with scientific data. But that's my science and that's my reality. I've seen the successes that I've had with people improving their lives, getting them off diabetes medications, reducing their waist size, making them happy. If you're fat and you feel bad, you're not happy. Okay. If your brain is lacking nutrition, you're riddled with anxiety and depression, and improving people's lives. And I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in my patients. And I've also seen where other physicians, like you're talking about, have had great successes. We talk about diets, and veganism is one of the diets that a lot of people think is healthy. I happen to think it's extremely unhealthy, but frequently you'll see people go from veganism back to eating meat. Rarely do you see someone that's been vegan that goes back to eating meat that goes back to being a vegan. You never see. I mean, usually they experiment with veganism and then they figure out that it doesn't work, unless they're just so headstrong. Like I've had a couple vegans in my practice, and I respect their thoughts, and I ask them why they're a vegan, and if they tell me it's about their health, then I can talk there and discuss it all day as why they're wrong. But if they say it's, basically their morals and they don't want to kill an animal, I'm not as forceful, but I do tell them, I said, are you willing to continue this diet if it's harmful to your health? A lot of them say, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of moral conviction around these food conversations. It gets pretty dogmatic, which is pretty unfortunate.
People like Sean and other people that are fighting back against veganism as far as the moral compass of it is, well, you think that plant that you grow, you don't think anything died because of it?
100%.
I mean, the plowing, the chemicals, a lot of organisms are destroyed because of that. And the other thing, they talk about health and wellness. I mean, just about all the food that you've, unless it's organic, and who knows, even if it's organic, it can be called a lot of things. But unless it's completely organic, you're consuming a lot of chemicals and pesticides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't aware of that. And we've just normalized these feelings of just not feeling well, which is unfortunate. But I think that we're encouraged when we have conversations like this and connect with physicians like you that, want to preach about diet and lifestyle is like the best form of medicine and really help get patients healthier. So I know both of us always learn a ton when we get to sit down and talk with you, and just appreciative of you coming back on for round 2 and opening your home to us, and looking forward to enjoying some steaks with you later.
This is a treat to me. I mean, you guys have gotten me to love me a lot. I love to talk and I love people. So this is a treat for me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks, Dr. Brooke.
Absolutely.